There are many Jedi who have mastered the blade, very few though who have mastered the art of the duel, and only one who dared to build a superior lightsaber. Not just superior to the common designs of the era, but superior to the weapons of his own masters, including the great and wise Grandmaster Yoda, the greatest duelist of the age. The Jedi in question was Dooku of Sereno. Long before he became Darth Tyrannus, long before Geonosis and the Separatist movement, Dooku was already different. Not because he fell to the dark side, but because he believed deeply, unshakably, that there was a higher way to wield the Force. Dooku believed that the Force was not just a spiritual current to be followed, nor merely a tool of peacekeeping. To Dooku, the Force was a hierarchy. Those that could not touch it were below those who could. And among those who could touch the Force, the only true way to measure superiority was through the duel. Not through war, not through rage, but through the elegant, controlled, ruthless art of lightsaber combat at its highest form. That philosophy produced a weapon unlike any other in the Jedi Order. Dooku's lightsaber, first the Jedi variant with a blue blade, then later the Crimson Sith version, was famous across the galaxy for its elegance, its perfect balance, and refined craftsmanship. Jedi and Sith alike who encountered it, Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, even Sidious, all remarked the same things. The weight of it was flawless, the balance was exact down to the millimeter. The curve of the hilt guided the wrist naturally into precision strikes, and every component, every emitter, focusing lens, power cell, and alloy frame was assembled not by droids or by Jedi forges, but by Dooku's own hands. It was not a factory weapon, it was a declaration. Not just that Dooku was a master of the blade, but that he intended to go beyond Jedi tradition, beyond his Jedi Master Thame Cerulian, beyond even Yoda. But this is not where our story begins. To understand why Dooku built that lightsaber, to understand how he rediscovered a forgotten form in Makashi Form 2 and resurrected the ancient art of the duel, to understand why he chose elegance over fury and precision over chaos, you have to begin with the man who trained him first, the Jedi Master by the name of Thame. Before he was apprenticed to Yoda, before he became the ideal Jedi Knight, Dooku belonged to someone else. Jedi Master Thame Cerulian. Thame was everything the Republic admired in a Jedi consular: cultured, soft-spoken, a researcher of history and of politics. He was one of the few Jedi who truly believed that the Sith would one day return, so he studied ancient holocrons to prepare himself intellectually for that day. He was knowledgeable, patient, and calm. To many, he was brilliant. To Dooku, he was almost exactly what a Jedi should be. Thame taught Dooku diplomacy. He taught him how to read people not just with the Force, but through posture, tone, and hesitation. Thame took Dooku into the archives and showed him how to question history instead of memorizing it. He even planted a foundational truth in the young Dooku's mind. The Sith are not myths, they are inevitable. For a time, Dooku respected him. Dooku even chose in his own mind to become his apprentice, because Dooku never believed the master chose a Padawan. He believed that the knight earned a student, and that he, Dooku of House Sereno, permitted Thame to guide him. But admiration faded, where it began to break. As Dooku grew stronger, more disciplined, more brilliant, he noticed something that Thame lacked: conviction. Thame studied the Sith, but did nothing to alert the Council to their return. Thame believed the galaxy was falling to corruption, but offered no solutions. Thame could see the storm clouds on the horizon, yet still stood still and whispered about philosophy. To Dooku, this was unforgivable. Worse, Thame was a duelist in name only. He practiced Form 3 Surisu, the defensive style of calm and survival, a form designed not to win, but to not lose. Circular blocks, endurance, outlasting the enemy. To a young man whose blood sang for mastery, for precision, elegance, and the thrill of battle, Surisu felt like suffocation. It was boring, it was passive, it was everything Dooku despised about the modern Jedi. But nothing angered Dooku more than Form 6 Niman, a balanced form, a little from every style, master of none. In Dooku's eyes, pathetic, a form for politicians with lightsabers, not for Jedi. Dooku learned these styles because tradition demanded it, because Thame taught it, but inside, he seethed. Thame was half right about the Sith, half right about the galaxy's decline, but he was wholly a failure when it came to action. The quiet fracture then began. Dooku continued to grow, taller, sharper, more precise in speech and lightsaber. He built his first lightsaber then, a traditional straight hilt weapon molded after Thame's own, functional, respectable, completely unremarkable. But Dooku's ambition had already outgrown his master. And when the moment came, when Dooku formally petitioned the Jedi Council to leave his master and study directly under Grandmaster Yoda, Thame simply let him go. No protest, no defense, no belief that he could still teach Dooku. To Dooku, that confirmed everything. He didn't shape me, he only slowed me down. From that day on, never spoken aloud, never shown in anger, Dooku's respect turned into a cold, controlled resentment. He would never again build a lightsaber like his master's. He would never again follow someone else's philosophy. And he would never forgive Thame for being too weak to do anything but to watch him leave. Leaving Thame should have felt like freedom. He was no longer bound to a master he saw as passive and as weak. He had been accepted personally by none other than Grandmaster Yoda. This was something that was unheard of in the modern Jedi Order. Yoda rarely took Padawans, and when he did, it was only those who he believed would shape the future of the Jedi Order. To train under Yoda was to be given a place near legend, and for a time, Dooku thrived. Yoda taught the young Dooku Form 4 Ataru, the aggressive acrobatic form of lightsaber combat. Ataru was explosive, graceful, kinetic, built upon momentum, precision, and an absolute connection to the Force. Dooku admired it. He admired Yoda. He admired the discipline, the agility, the philosophy of absolute control under pressure. But even here, beneath the greatest duelist of the age, Dooku felt a familiar bitterness rising. Because Form 4 was powerful, but it was not perfect. It relied on speed, endurance, and acrobatics, traits Yoda embodied effortlessly. But Dooku was tall, elegant, aristocratic in posture. His strength was in his precision, not in flipping through the air. To Dooku, Form 4 was beautiful, but it was not his, and he could feel it. This was not the end of the journey, and the seeds of discontent continued to be sowed. Dooku would stand in the archives long after the lights had dimmed and younglings slept. There, he studied the holocron recordings of the ancients, before the Jedi were peacekeepers and were warriors, before the Jedi debated politics in the Senate, and Dooku began to resent the Jedi. They preached peace, yet sat at the feet of corruption. They trained warriors, yet feared war. They studied the Force, yet ignored its oldest truths. And even under Yoda, he was still only a student of their forms, their history, and their limits. But deep in those archives, behind holopads covered in dust, Dooku found something that did not belong to this era. He discovered Form 2 Makashi. Nearly every Jedi knew of Form 2, but to hear about something and to understand something are two completely different things. It was in Form 2 Makashi, the dueling form, the purest expression of lightsaber combat, a style born thousands of years earlier during the Great Wars between Jedi and Sith when lightsaber duels were not rare, but they were constant. It was everything Form 3 and 6 were not. It was not defensive endurance, it was not balanced fallback, but precision, elegance, control, a form meant to end duels with a single perfect strike. It was fencing. It was chess played at light speed. It was dominance achieved not through strength, but through superiority of mind and blade. To Dooku, it was perfect. He drilled in secret, not recklessly, not with rage, but with quiet, relentless obsession. While others slept, he practiced the Makashi salute, the wrist rotations, the perfect lunge, the angled parry. He traced the movements of the ancient Sith, arrogant, powerful, disciplined duelists without ever admitting how much they truly fascinated him. This is where the real power lived, not in passion, not in rage, but in refined will. To Dooku, Thame never understood this. Yoda never embraced it. So he would. He would no longer carry a lightsaber that reflected a master. He wanted one that reflected him. And so he began his first act of open defiance, not in words, not in violence, but in design. Dooku had outgrown the shadow of Thame. He had absorbed the teachings of Yoda, but now he was ready for something neither master could give him. A lightsaber that reflected not tradition, but his new identity. That weapon would become the curved-hilted lightsaber. Elegant, predatory, perfectly balanced, the first of its kind seen in generations. But this was not about just design. It was about rebellion, about philosophy. It was about pride. Nearly every Jedi built their lightsaber following the guidance of their master. Consciously or not, their lightsaber reflects that lineage. The hilts echo the teacher's design, or replicate the simple practicality of standard Jedi weapons. Dooku had done that once. His first lightsaber was straight-hilted, reserved, traditional, built when he still walked willingly with Thame. but after discovering Form 2, in Makashi, the weapon felt like a chain. Dooku wanted something different, something graceful, precise, dignified. A weapon designed for dueling, not defending, for superiority, not survival. So he returned to the Jedi archives, not for knowledge on meditation or the living force, but for schematics, for centuries-old weapon designs from the Great Sith War and the 100-Year Darkness, for records of blades wielded by ancient Jedi battle masters and Sith aristocrats, those who fought one-on-one, blade against blade, with no armor, no distraction, only skill. And in those archives, Dooku finally found it. A reference to a weapon variant, the curved-hilt lightsaber. But why curved? To the untrained eye, it was a simple aesthetic flourish. To a Makashi duelist, it was everything. The curve allowed the wielder to align the blade perfectly with the forearm during a thrust. It offered micro-adjustments in angles that a straight-hilt lightsaber would never be able to provide. It gave unrivaled control in one-handed fencing, the core of Form 2, and at its highest level, it allowed for something beautiful and terrifying. Dominance without effort. Built by hand, Dooku did not allow Jedi temple droids to manufacture it. He did not consult with other Jedi artisans. He did not trace the hilt of Yoda or Thame. He forged the hilt himself. Piece by piece, emitter to pommel, he sourced rare alloys, elegant but not gaudy. He selected a kyber crystal that produced a serene, noble blue, and he filed the grip by hand until the balance was exact. Not 1 gram wasted, not one line of the hilt without purpose. The result was a weapon described by nearly everyone who ever looked at it as perfectly weighted, balanced to the atom, elegant, almost antique. Yoda said this, "Your blade is your mind, Dooku, sharper than most." But Yoda also understood the silent message. I do not follow your path, I have surpassed it. Dooku's lightsaber was not made in defiance of Jedi principles, it was made in defiance of mediocrity. It rejected Thame's passivity, Yoda's insistence on tradition, and worse, the Jedi's drift towards compromise and political servility. Form 3's survival mindset was not enough. Form 6's laziness was disguised as balance. But Dooku's lightsaber was precision over power, skill over strength, superiority over sentiment. It was his manifesto, but written in metal and crystal, not with ink. His peers never understood what it meant. Other Jedi saw it as pride. They weren't wrong, but they missed a deeper truth. Dooku did not build it to show arrogance. He built it because he believed. He believed with absolute certainty that if darkness rose again, lightsaber against lightsaber, he was the only Jedi truly prepared to meet it. By the time his curved-hilt lightsaber was complete, Dooku stood at a crossroads. He was still a Jedi, still respected, still trusted. But inside, something irreversible had happened. He had seen the truth. The Jedi Order was no longer an order of duelists. It was an order of diplomats. They preached peace while ignoring the corruption of the Senate. They trained with lightsabers, but rarely mastered them. They studied the ancient Sith, yet refused to believe in their return. They claimed to be guardians, but they could barely defend themselves from each other, let alone from a rising darkness. And Dooku, with the arrogance of certainty, believed this. If the Sith return, most Jedi will fall in minutes. Not from weakness of the Force, but weakness of will, of discipline, of edge. He didn't know when, he didn't know how, but he knew it was coming. And deep within, beneath layers of pride, disdain, and resignation, Dooku was afraid. His fear of the Order's decline eventually became the very thing that he exploited. When Sidious approached him, he didn't tempt Dooku with rage or vengeance. He tempted him with reason. The Republic is corrupt. The Jedi are blind. The galaxy needs order. Your kind of order. It wasn't the dark side that seduced Dooku. It was the idea that someone finally understood. By the time he accepted the name Darth Tyrannus, the transformation had already occurred. Not in the red blade he built shortly after, but in the blue one that he had forged years earlier. His Sith lightsaber was built with the same hands, the same precision, the same elegance. Only now the crystal bled red. The philosophy remained unchanged, however. Skill is power. The blade is truth, and I am its finest wielder. The characters of Dooku and Anakin have a lot in common, but Dooku hid his darkness behind refinement. Anakin wore it on his face, in his voice, in every breath. But they were never opposites. They were echoes of the same mistake, both prodigies, both disillusioned with a stagnant order, both believing the Jedi were unprepared for true darkness. The difference though, Dooku left quietly, by choice. Anakin fell loudly, by heartbreak and by fire. In the end, Dooku did exactly what he had warned. He proved the Jedi were not ready. He dueled them. He murdered them. He toppled worlds with politics and precision. His lightsaber, curved, elegant, hand-built, became the symbol of everything that he was. Superior, isolated, right, and horribly, fatally wrong. But still, if you place every lightsaber in the Jedi Temple on a table, if you weighed them, studied them, tested their balance, there is only one blade that would still stand above the rest. Not because it burned the brightest, but because it was made by a man who believed more than anyone that mastery was not inherited, it was built. The clearest way to understand Dooku is to understand his blade, because in the Jedi, a lightsaber is more than a weapon, it is a mirror. Some sabers grow worn, humble, stripped of ornament like Yoda's. His lightsaber is small, unadorned, scratched by time and by use. There is nothing elegant about it, nothing regal, but that's the point. Yoda never cared how it looked. He never reforged it to impress. To Yoda, the weapon is not a symbol of rank or refinement. It is simply an extension of the self. Judge me by my size, do you? The same could be said of his weapon. Judge me not by my weapon or its polish. Judge me by how I wield it. Dooku's lightsaber said this: I have refined the art beyond my masters. I have surpassed the blade and the order that forged it. My weapon is not merely an extension of myself, it is proof of who I choose to become. And there is a difference. Yoda's lightsaber informs that he needed nothing but the Force. Dooku's lightsaber tells you that he demanded more. Perfection, elegance, superiority through discipline. And that is why his fall shook the Jedi. Not because he was their enemy, but because he was once their ideal. But anyway, my friends and fellow lore junkies, what are your thoughts on Dooku's lightsaber, and how in his mind, he built a superior lightsaber to both Thame and Yoda, his Jedi Masters? As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching and stopping by the archives here again today, and as always, may the Force be with you.